Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited about our episode today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, but sometimes the things that bring us the most pleasure in the short term can have negative consequences in the long term. Andrew Huberman, our guest today, student, teacher, pursuer of greatness in all things fitness, business, an actual metabolic interventionist. I had the beauty of meeting this person at an event and benefiting from their grace and their patience and their just good heartedness through a good friend that actually brought them to a community that we love on this podcast called the Top Contractor School. They are an advisor and have been a trainer for, shout out to Cisco Barron, a great friend for years. They are the metabolic interventionist for his company, ABC Paving. They are an entrepreneur and a professional strongman, 2+ decades in the fitness business, and really breaking convention around the big box and the generic philosophy around personal training. Our guest
Yes.
today, oh yeah, Adam Geiger is here to teach us about what is metabolic interventionist and how to be successful in fitness. Thanks for coming on the show, my friend.
Man, I appreciate you having me on here. I've been looking forward to this since you told me about it. Having this conversation. I love conversing with you, so I'm pumped about today.
I'm curious because when I was watching you on shout out to the Unraised podcast, it's a great episode between you and Cisco for those listening. You talked about actually growing up skinny and not be and so the person that people are seeing on YouTube today, you're like 6'4", 5", brolic as hell. But you actually were skinny when you were growing up and you built all this from nothing?
Yeah, so growing up, I was skinny. I graduated high school at 6'3" and like right over 170 pounds.
Wow.
I was a sprinter growing up, so I was really fast, but never big, never known to be strong, nothing, crazy like that. I guess just kind of a skinny, fast athlete. And that was it. Yeah. So what you see today is something that was definitely worked for. When we talk about having to work for something, I guess in fitness, we all have a thing. Some people are trying to, lose fat. Others of us were trying to gain muscle. Like that was kind of my backstory is I had to work really hard to try to put on any sort of muscle. So
Yeah, let's start with the really skinny rail people listening to this for a second. We'll go to those struggling on the other side of
on
this.
the other side, yeah.
The guys and gals that struggle building up, where would you advise them to start? Like
Um,
philosophically, exercise wise, what's your belief around that? Where would you advise someone to start so they don't get demotivated from the beginning? They're skinny.
yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is come to grips with the fact that it's going to take time and there's going to be zero instant gratification with this. Even if you're bringing in things like steroids or something like that, there's still no instant gratification. It's going to be consistent habitual behavior. And so that's like the first thing you have to really come to grips with. And if you can't come to grips with step one, all the other steps, probably aren't going to follow in suit very well because you're looking for the here and now. Um, the other thing would be like, I guess I'm kind of thinking of this as like if I was giving tidbits of advice, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, Getting fat is not getting big. Getting fat is not getting strong. Getting fat is just getting fat. Um, and on top of that, it's also pushing unhealthy boundaries, no matter how we look at it. We can be positive about that stuff. And that's probably a whole different conversation, but it scientifically, it is what it is. You're pushing the boundaries of being unhealthy. Um, so I guess I kind of start there. You know what I mean? Obviously, you have to eat in a caloric surplus, but not so much of a caloric surplus that you're getting fat, right? That can be a slippery slope because when we hear that, we want to get big now,
Uh,
and sometimes we think that means just eating continuously. And then also seen it to where that eating continuously isn't just in the pursuit of getting big, it's kind of accompanied by, on some level, um, they think they're working harder than they are. They go to the gym, they get a pump, and they lifted whatever, did arms and chest that day. And because of that, now they can afford, 3/4 or a whole large pizza because it's bulking. And you're like, no, you can't. You didn't work that hard, bro. You need a reality check.
Wow.
And B, your body can't do something with all of it. You know what I mean? So quality matters in all aspects, whether it be the quality of form, the quality of food, the quality of content you're putting into your brain. All those things matter when you're trying to put on muscle. Um, yeah, I would start there. I think most people probably say like eat your protein, which I mean, I don't know, like duh, you got to eat your protein.
Why does the pizza why does the pizza why is the pizza not justified by the exercise?
Well, typically people are going to think they put in way more effort than they did. And the reason why I say this is I recently read a study that they asked, I don't remember, it was like 1,700 and some odd people. It was a super big amount of people. How many of them thought that they got the required 10,000 steps in a day? And 50% of people raised their hands. So those 50% of people, they gave them pedometers. And out of those 50%, how many would you guess actually hit that 10,000?
Maybe less than 10% or 5%, or very
It
small.
was
Oh, wow.
5%. So like that
Wow.
tells us that we really think we do more than we do. And we're a little bit skewed there. We're probably a bit skewed in how much effort we put out on a daily basis and how much food is required for that effort.
How much do you think that could have the case with, or to do with our emotions, like influencing our thoughts?
Oh, I think emotions directly influence thoughts. We could kind of dive down the rabbit hole that Professor Sapolsky talks about with free will,
You like
right?
him too?
Yeah, I love Robert Sapolsky.
We
He's
need
my
an extra
dude.
hour for this podcast, my friend. Another thing we have in common. Yeah, what is he?
Yes.
Yeah, what is he? What? Yeah,
He really turned me on to the thought of free will, right? And he's a big believer, and I guess I don't want to say I'm a big believer. I do believe in it. I don't know if it's my only belief system there, but it is a big portion of that. I don't believe we do have free will. Free will would be stating that we can make any moves we want in life with no repercussion at the end on any level. And we just don't have that. You know what I mean? We also just don't have the free will to make our own free choice. Um, most of our choices are based upon things that happened seconds, minutes, hours, decades, all that ago. So if it's influenced by that, did I really have the free choice here? Like I do have the free choice, but my body doesn't probably utilize that free choice. It's gonna utilize hormones, and that's how I'm gonna respond.
so for example, like I just did this workout. I feel really, really good from the endorphins and so on. Then I eat the whole pizza pie without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Or it could look like, man, I went in there today and I PR'd that workout. I went an extra 20 minutes and I used extra weights and I'm proud of myself. So in turn, I'm going to give myself this. And you're like, and that could be a fact of, they thought they burned more calories, or they're kidding themselves in the fact that they think they need a present at the end of doing something good, you know?
That habit, does that have catastrophic consequences on the results, or can it? That
I,
habit?
I think it could contextually, you know what I mean? Like if we looked at things like culture, I don't think that rewarding people is always a bad thing, but in the wrong dialects or context, it could for sure blow up in your
Mm.
face. And so I think you got to be careful about those, like when you're using them, why you're using them, and that sort of thing. Because that, for example, um, someone like myself, if I was a client of somebody and they said, Adam, you've been working hard for 3 weeks and you've really followed your diet perfectly, you can have a cheat meal today. For a lot of people, that cheat meal would probably help them, would satiate them. They'd be like, I had it. I can go back to this eating clean thing. I don't work that way.
Wow.
if I have the taste of it, now I want it. I want it for good. So if you reward me with that, that could be bad because now my coach just said I could, so I will. And then I'm now going to have either I'm going to keep doing it after, or it's going to be a really hard, whatever, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, drying out from
Mm.
sugar type thing.
Wow.
So I
Mm.
guess contextually would be my
Yeah.
answer.
How important is knowing oneself when they're going on a fitness journey or
It's the everything, man. I think that's you knowing yourself, being truthful with yourself. Um, and to go along with that, it's using the correct words because the way we verbiage, we is that am I using the right word there? Whatever verbiage we utilize in our
yeah.
brain, right? Or we tell ourselves, that's our truth. And sometimes we don't even mean to say it in certain words. And it's something that I feel like I'm very passionate about and I correct clients on quite a bit. So I'm like, that's not what happened. Like, oh, we were on vacation, and so when we're on vacation. No, I really couldn't work out. You can't say you couldn't. No, we have to reverbalize it. Reverb. What's the word I'm looking?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Verbalize
Yeah.
that is saying,
Yeah.
when I went out there, I had the opportunity to, but instead I utilized that to hang out with my family, or instead I utilized that to do this. That's the truth of the matter. And then when you tell yourself the truth of the matter, your brain can make an actual decision on what actually happened there. Like we tend to lie to ourselves, and a lot of times it's unknowing.
Wow.
And even if we take a step further back, a lot of times it's a behavior pattern that was brought to us by parents and environmental and that sort of thing. So you're really going to break down some nitty gritty shit in there.
How about this time piece? Let's go back to number one about, take time or things will take time. What is how much time?
That's
How
a good
how far
question.
out could I look? What are some are there heuristics or like tools that you could use? Like, how much time? Like is it 6 months? Is it 3 years? Would you break it down to then look so you're looking far out, but not too far?
Yeah.
What
Um,
advice do you have around that?
when it comes to time, I think that, especially when I'm recommending to a client or I'm letting them know, hey, this is what I've seen. This is typically between this and this is what I've seen. These are some time frames. And I think that's important because we need to um, we need to see an endpoint, or even more so, most humans don't like uncertainty. And so just to have the certainty of, oh, there's an endpoint to this. There is an endpoint and it's here. Like, okay, even if it's a far ass tunnel, at least there's a light at the end of that tunnel. But really, the two gauges, I guess I utilize the most are gauges that I don't even know that me as a coach or anybody around you can see. And that's typically effort and participation.
Hmm.
Right. So the more effort you put in every day and the more you participate in that every day, the faster that can come. And then after that, it's going to be merely, environmental, genetics, and probably things that we can't control. But
Hmm.
participation and effort are the only two things you can control there. And if you really go hard there, it's going to happen faster for you.
Do you see the genetics piece becoming often a psychological rationalization, like fall into the rationalization category, or like some type of yeah, like devaluing narrative, or like, oh, I can't because of this genetic or
I think about that quite often. And I personally see it about 50-50. I definitely see times when people are like, because, and I'm like, we have to reword that. It's not because of, or I also see people that don't realize that that's what they're struggling with, and they're constantly downing themselves. And I'm like, this is a thyroid issue. And if it's a thyroid issue, this is an actual biological function that I mean, you can control, but you can't snap your fingers and control all. So give yourself some grace and know that it's not always going to be like that. um so I'd say it's probably 50-50 really.
so is a big part of your help is differentiating so the resistance is less and the client has a greater likelihood of succeeding. Because the reason I ask that is if I don't know I have a thyroid and I just keep beating myself up, I'm like the more I work might start working against me.
That's exactly right. That becomes stress. And Andrew Huberman coined this very well, this limbic friction,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
And this fight that happens in the brain. And so um yeah, letting people know like you have this problem and there is a better way to go about it. And what you're doing is causing this and you're feeling these things, and they're like, oh my gosh, I am. And it's a little validating. They're like, oh, okay, so it's not that I'm lazy. I'm like, it's not that you're lazy, it's
Hmm.
you were just it was knowledge, you just lacked knowledge, that's all. Like, look how hard you were trying every day, but it wasn't the right knowledge. So that person, I can tell them, if I just give you the knowledge, you're going to run with it,
Hmm.
right? So it's just giving them a truthful knowledge. And for other people it might be like, hey, we've been talking for a while, and I'm really getting to know you, and I'm seeing some patterns, and there needs to be some truth told in these patterns, and you need to recognize these patterns a little bit. And I find that typically when you see those patterns in people, for the most part, they're like, oh, and they kind of take it, and it's food for thought, and they work with it because they also realize how much they've told on themselves, and how much of those problems they're like, whoa, I've put it all those actually out there, and that is true. All these things connect. I'm doing this quite often, and okay, that's where I really need to start, is why am I making these choices or these decisions or whatever it is.
Hmm. Well, the numbers, like uh, calorie, macro, yeah, not macros, the numbers. How important do you think the numbers are? Like X amount of calories, someone's, metabolic burn or whatnot.
Yeah,
How
so
is it? Are they
this can get tricky.
helpful? Yeah, I'm curious about this.
This can get tricky because overarchingly, no matter what, it's calories in versus calories out, right? If you overeat what you're outputting, you'll gain, and vice versa. What my job really is to figure out, like, why is this caloric output so small? What is happening? Because if we only control the caloric input, we're always dieting, right? And if we have somebody who has an actual metabolic dysfunction, let's say like thyroiditis, inflamed thyroid, which means that they're not producing enough thyroid hormone, and ultimately the reason why they're not burning a lot of calories is because their cells aren't getting energy from the thyroid. So
Huh.
in that scenario, if you're just always constricting calories on some level or trying to manipulate calories, you're going to do more damage to that thyroid. And especially if you start going keto and
That's
pulling
interesting.
carbs, and you start doing more metabolic damage there. So what you have to do is say, this person is coming to me because they're not burning enough. Why are they not?
Wait, I want to
Well,
use an analogy. See
okay.
if this is helpful. If I have a business and I just keep cutting costs versus reinvesting, like if I just keep cutting the cost, trying to lower the labor, get my cost down as possible, it's like I'm dieting, right? I'm lowering the inputs. The calories are coming in or less. I'm spending less, on my overhead. I'm cutting staff. But if I do that forever, then no one knows about me. I didn't invest in marketing. I didn't reinvest capital back in the business. Like
Well,
that's an
yeah, you're
analogy.
right. And let's
Like,
take it a step further, even into
yeah,
your realm with culture.
okay.
So you start cutting costs, right? You have an employee meeting. You're like, guys, things are getting tough. We gotta tighten the belts, right? So that's the initial one. And now people are a little mad because they don't have the perks they once did. Then we have another one. We're like, hey, not only are we cutting costs, but I need everybody to pick up extra shifts on Saturdays now. Oh
Now the
shit,
thyroid is shaking.
right? Now we're doing that. Now because things are stressful and boss is stressed out, the workers are stressed out. He's also cutting, nobody's taking breaks. And then also in the break room, they stopped putting snacks in there, right? So now we have overproduction, we have people pissed off, all these hours being worked. And what's really happening is we're getting less out of everybody, even though everybody's working more. So in that scenario, what me and you would actually do, Jay, is we walk in and we go, hey, we get we're in the red, but this isn't a game of subtraction anymore. This is a game of addition. We got to make people happy. We got to make them proficient. We got to make their time here worth a fuck. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on your podcast.
No, believe
Uh,
it or not, we're marked explicit. I
okay.
don't know why.
Okay. um,
So anyway,
we have to do these things so we can actually get more production out of them, right?
yeah.
So now, if I was saying that in a caloric look, it wouldn't be like, And this is what you hear a lot of trainers say. We got to fuel the fire by adding more logs, adding more food, right? Well, it's not adding more food. This company can't handle to add more incoming business. Everybody's burnt the hell out, right? What we need is quality, right? So
Wow.
we need quality foods, right? So we need quality decision making. Like, hey, we still got to work Monday through Saturday, but everybody is going to make sure they get a 15-minute break, an hour-long lunch, and I'm going to make sure that you guys have snacks in the break room during that time also. And we're providing those things because we can still do that, right? And I'm also going to make sure that I'm walking through here and saying hi and getting involved in those sort of things. Like we're giving back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
And now we
communication.
start bolstering it and we can start moving forward and turning the company around. But
Hmm.
when your outlook on the metabolism is always take, you just start pissing everybody off and they revolt. And then eventually your company folds.
So now, in the capacity of the thyroid, is the thyroid essentially can be overworked and beat up based on the behaviors of the person.
Based on the behaviors, based on environmental factors. So environmental factors in our house of like mold and uh, the things like
Oh,
that, right? But then also in the business, and that it would have been like the environmental factors. If they took the food away, like there's no more break. Like now it feels crappy and dingy, and
what
when
role
you
does
walk in,
stress
nobody says
have?
hi anymore because it's so stressful. And
What role does stress have on the thyroid or on the person's ability to metabolize? Does it have a role?
stress is kind of everything, because stress encapsulates all that, right? Like if you're under eating by too much, it's stressful. If you're overworking out, it's stressful. If you're in a toxic relationship, it's stressful. If you're stuck in a job you hate, it's stressful, right? Now, I don't know, I just named off 4 or 5 things. And
Yeah.
I think we could probably look at 10 of the closest people in our lives and say that a lot of them would mark off 3 to 4 of those out of 5.
Yeah.
Right. And then we'd also look at those people. And if we looked at their body compositions and how well they sleep and anything they're taking medication for, it would probably start to make sense. Right. And that's kind of what I'm doing is linking those things together and saying, look at all these places. And then they go, oh my God, I didn't realize. And they're like, yeah, your personal company's going to shit. Like
Wow.
and that's when people tend to turn the corner once they see that their personal bottom line is like truly being affected.
Exercise, cardio, weight training. How do you see them fitting together? And so I know it's a broad generalization, but if you were to generalize it just for the layperson that's trying to get started and needs to understand some basic fundamentals. Like
Sure.
they're going to go to the gym, they're going to pay $10 a month, walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes and then go home and then forget they were paying the $10 a month. So
Yeah.
how do we speak? Let's speak to that person first, because that's a lot of people.
Okay. So we need a mix of both just to start out. We have to do cardio. We have to do weight training. One without the other. No yin, no yang. You'll end up dying early. End of that story. Um, but if we were to look at it on more simpler terms, if your problem is truly you do not output enough calories for what you're putting in, then cardiovascular work initially can be really friendly, could be a good push for you because cardiovascular, obviously, it's going to help out with like lung capacity and VO2 max and heart health, but it burns calories. And if you just don't burn enough calories, so if you're Mrs. Smith and I don't know, you're an accountant or you're Mr. Smith and you're an accountant, I don't care, and you sit in a chair all day and you can't get up and get 10,000 steps in a day, well, you need more generalized movement. So you need to get on there and walk or jog or whatever you can do for 30 minutes to an hour. They recommend 75 uh, minutes a week of doing it. So at least that to overarchingly burn a lot of calories, right? So you can lose the weight. Um, building muscle is important because building muscle is where you're able to store carbs and it makes you stronger. So without muscle and without lifting weights and doing things like that, You also don't create what's called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factors for the brain, which help you learn and do all kinds of cool stuff. So lifting helps you learn, which is a big deal. But your muscles act as silos. So we take glucose or carbs from the blood and we either put them in the liver for storage for when we do cardio later, or we store them in the muscle for when the muscle has to be flexed later. So if you don't have a lot of muscle, you don't have a lot of storage, which means you can't eat a lot of carbs, because if you do, you either A, better use them, or B, it's going to convert to fat via the liver.
And then that's harder to get rid of.
What part?
Fat.
And then yeah, so then the liver will, now the liver's, depending on how I guess in shape you are and how much movement you get.
Yeah.
If you are constantly eating a lot of carbs, then your body's constantly producing insulin. Insulin is trying to get the carbs deposited into a cell, but that's probably not happening quickly. Over time, you become insulin resistant. Insulin just hitting the organs, nerve endings, things like that. It's not good for cells. It's not good for nerves, nerve endings. It's not good for organs to constantly be under the stress of insulin. So your body can actually start grabbing or taking the glucose, converting it in the liver, and then slapping it on the liver. And we end up with like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease from that.
Wow.
It's one of the reasons why like diabetics end up with fatty liver, because your liver it's responsible for doing so much that it can't keep up, you know? And if your average American diet is, high fat, high carb, or moderate fat, however you want to look at it, you know what I mean? It's low protein, higher fat, higher carbohydrate throughout the whole day. That's exactly what's happening then. This person is sitting a lot, right? They're snacking on those carbs, those sugars. Simple sugars, specifically like table sugar, can only be utilized by liver cells, right? So if you're eating a lot of sugar in the day, your liver's already trying to keep up with handling that,
Wow.
right? And then if it can't and you're already insulin resistant, like, it just spells disaster and you decline quickly.
Like a compound in a negative way.
Yeah, it's like an arm loan in the negative way. It's just bad. One
Wow.
thing starts triggering, and as it gets worse, it's like more like an avalanche. It gets like bigger and faster the more that gets behind it, and that's what sucks. And then as this metabolic function is gaining speed and the avalanche is getting bigger, then they come to either myself or a trainer or something like that, and they're like, I want to lose fat. And you're like, your biology is like just coming down. We have to stop this
What
first.
do carbohydrates do?
Across the whole body, as a whole, they give the body's main source of energy. So it's your body's first and main source of energy. If there are carbohydrates within the bloodstream or in the body, your body will use that, or your brain is going to use that as its main source of energy.
If they're like not new, if they're new in a sense, or if they're like fresh.
In the bloodstream,
Yeah, like it'll use it first, but it could convert to you said it could
ketones.
store in the muscle, it could store in the liver, you said?
Yeah, so we can store glucose in the liver and in the muscle for later.
And the more muscle we have, the more we could store it. So we actually end up using that versus it becoming fat
So the more we can potentially store, right?
potentially.
The more muscle,
You
the more
elaborate?
potentially. Because if we say we can store, it's like saying if you have a lot of muscle, you can always do it. But you can have a lot of muscle and be insulin resistant too. So you have the
Wow.
potential to store more in there.
Okay.
Now, there is the potential to store, and then there's the how fast can we actually store it, right?
Wow.
We have the potential to store a bunch, but if we're taking in so much for so long periods of time and our body doesn't have enough insulin to handle that, or our beta cells in our pancreas are starting to, shit on a little bit and they can't handle it, well, then we can't get it into the cell fast enough. And then we're
Wow.
still seeing this turnover in the liver where we're converting it to VLDL fats, and that's really bad.
But carbohydrates is energy.
Carbohydrates is energy.
First.
Glucose is energy.
So and now what's muscle?
Muscle can be used as energy also.
Oh,
So when our heart rate's high and our oxygen levels are low, then our bodies are going to look for glucose as our main source of fuel. Once we run out of glucose, then our bodies are going to look towards amino acids. And that's why they say like eat protein or drink amino acids during your workout, because then your body will utilize those. They're in the blood. But if there's nothing in the blood, the body will start breaking down muscle into amino acids and utilizing that as a source of fuel.
Now, would we not want to break down the muscle? Because that's going to help us later, like when we're not exercising.
That's going what they call catabolic.
It's interesting. It's like I'm trying to think like, is muscle if we were to analogize it to business, like what's debt and what's equity, you know? It's like you're great with these metaphors. So
It's everything I think about is always, I try to like business or money. I feel like people can always kind
yeah,
of
well, at least that's
think of
you
it
know,
that way.
it's just an interesting. You know this. You have a such deep understanding, like so. It's like making me curious. Because if carbohydrates, right? It's like I have my our American Express. It's like our carbohydrates. We're using that, but we better have the cash to be able to pay that thing. We better have the muscle to be able to. I'm just trying to. Maybe we could work this analogy out better for part two, but man, there's something here that understanding these, maybe it makes it more interesting for people to conceptualize. And like, I feel more motivated just talking to you. Like, got to get my ass in the garage on this treadmill, right? This Peloton treadmill. Because like not understanding this stuff is intimidating. Like, how much do you think of living a healthier lifestyle is about awareness and understanding? Like, because procrastination, right? Ben Franklin said, is the art of living yesterday, avoiding today, and destroying tomorrow. So I'm thinking, what do you think? And all your years of experience working with clients and getting so deeply in their mind, what relationship does their learning about it have with them pursuing it? Learning,
I
like learning enough to go, to
I
do
think learning
it.
is a huge part of it. And that's my personal philosophy. I think that I think when people have these almost aha moments about it, suddenly you're motivated to go, oh, I can put this together.
Yeah.
Uh, it's really analogous to, I had this really great manager one time, and like one of the only great managers I've ever had. He showed up, and I was just ready to probably get. He was brand new, but so I was ready for him to kind of come in and pick me apart and do all the regular manager stuff. And he came in, he had a meeting with me, and this man was just one of the best things
Wow.
that had ever happened to me. He came in and just explained why things were so important. And I think it's because he truly knew, like he knew why it was important and the impact it truly made. And once I understood the impacts things made, even on stuff that I thought was truly stupid prior, I was like, this doesn't make sense. This is dumb. I
Wow.
don't care. It's archaic. When he came in and explained it, I still understood why it was now important. And that why and understanding made me want to do it. Like as a reasonable adult, I guess. I was like, now I understand the impact. How could I not make the better choice? Like it just seems like it has to be made then.
So we talked about people that, let's say, struggle with putting on size. How about those that their big contention is feeling feeling overweight, and they also may be, you know, significantly heavier than would be best for their body type. Like, I'm trying to differentiate. It's feeling, but also it may be the case. Like they're very much overweight. How would you start that journey with someone that is on the other side of the spectrum? That is, they consider themselves, maybe they've been told by a doctor, hey, you're
Hey,
morbidly
you're
obese.
overweight and you need to do something about this type thing.
Yeah. So on that side of the coin, like you talked about
Those
your,
those are the
yeah,
my mass. That's most of my clients. That's the 99% I think of people that I deal with. They went to the doctor, they probably already knew. And not only did the doctor say they had to, but the doctor also said, based on your blood panels, you've been diagnosed with being diabetic, or your neuropathy is getting so bad because of your diabetes, right? Sometimes it's even a step past the diabetes that gets them. And then they say, why is this happening? The doctor very firmly tells them, like, you're obese. This is what's happening. And so once they come to me, there's definitely this kind of like I'm pulling a knife out of their stomach a little bit. It feels like where they're like, ow, this sucks. Like it hurts to say. Um, so it's
yeah.
this kind of balancing act of like, we have to know the truth, but we also have to know this isn't the end and we can do something about this. Like it's the two things can kind of be mutually exclusive at the same time. Like, yes, he is right, but yes, it's not forever. And it's only forever if you decide it is, because I can fix it. We can fix anything almost now, you know?
Mm.
So it- the word choices are kind of delicate because I want to be very straightforward, and I want them to know, I mean business, and we have to take this serious, but also like, I don't know, I kind of have bleeding heart, and I tend to like overhug, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that sucks. I know how that feels, and then go from there. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, how do you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, how does someone keep the weight off? How much of that is philosophy, psychology? Like,
It's all of it. I truly think keeping weight off is people. I'm going to go back to Robert Sapolsky again. We got to stop thinking about fitness so categorically. Like thinking about things categorically very much helps us problem solve, but it can lock us in too. And
oh,
when people come to me, they're like, I need a food plan, I need a workout plan, and a supplement plan. And I'm like, you do, but you need a lifestyle plan more than anything. Like, surely you need to move more, but you don't got to go to the gym. I mean, when we think about it, 10,000, not I should say 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 200 years ago, we didn't go to gyms. We just moved. We were humans and we acted like it. And then throughout time, we convenience, right? And then at some point, convenience kind of overburdened us on some level. And now things are a little too convenient and we have to have gyms. But really, we just have to find out how to get you to move more. Maybe that is a gym. Maybe that means you used to love skateboarding and you've been thinking about it forever and you're gonna go skateboarding again and you're just gonna do that. And that's your exercise. Like it doesn't have to be bench presses and squats and brown rice and broccoli. You know what I mean? It can
yeah.
it can look like generalized movement that you happen to just love and you want to get back into that's a hobby while making better food choices and as I always say, like eating like an adult, you know?
Mm.
I mean, I couldn't imagine ever being somebody's financial advisor and saying, you can never spend any money that on things that you don't need. It's always got to be things you need. Like that would be crazy. Like as adults, we swipe our debit card and then at some point we go, all right, I've been spending a bit. I don't really need that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I don't need that. And it's doing that. I don't need that food or I don't need to go there. I need to do this. And, you know,
The
it's that
food,
sort
the
of thing.
workout, the supplement, is that so that's outside of self. It's like what it's like what and how. It's knowledge. It's not necessarily understanding coming from like it's
Yeah,
kind of outside of the self. If you give me the food list, give me the workout, give me the supplement, but it seems like that's a part of it, but it's disconnected from this whole other aspect that you're talking about.
it is. It's like taking those and then saying, how do I make these actually work in somebody's life? How does this apply to you personally based off of me talking to you and me knowing, like really knowing you, and with the lifestyle and the workout stuff, right? And then with the supplements and the food, it's really understanding like what is going on with them metabolically. What do they actually need? Where is this happening downstream in their body that we need to fix this? This isn't just globalized stuff that's happening. This is very localized things. And how do we locally fix this? And then in what order do we need to fix this? There can be especially when you're looking at like metabolic dysfunction, there can be a lot of intricacies there that you really have to lay out and say what's actually the best move and what
Hmm.
do we not really have to worry about right now, you
What
know?
does the metabolic mean? For the gen. What is that? Does metabolic mean for the layperson?
So this is fun. This so typically when people think metabolism, I think they. So I think for most people, metabolic means like fat loss or lifting weights, or it just has some association with fitness on some level. And I know even for a long time it did with me. And I can't remember the name of the book I read. I want to say it was Breathe, but I'm not sure. But it made this reference to metabolism. It said metabolisms are is a metabolism is something that's had by humans, fish, plant life, cell organisms, and the only thing that differentiates living organisms from inanimate objects is a metabolism. And when I read that, I suddenly was like, I'm dealing with so much more. I'm dealing with somebody's their life, right? What makes you an alive human being? And that really suddenly made me
Wow.
take what I'm doing very seriously and say, like, I need to really understand the human biology and just the physiology as a whole and how they interplay together, because that is the metabolism. The metabolism is what separates us from being an inanimate object. It's our lifeline. It's energy is what makes our brain go, and our brain is what makes our heart pump. And if our brain isn't there and our heart isn't pumping, we're dead. Like that's your metabolism. And
Wow.
that's crazy to think about.
So, what is to you, a metabolic intervention about?
So a metabolic intervention is when there is something taking place within your metabolism that you feel you can't control anymore, and you need somebody to come in and take charge, right? And this is what we have to do now. This is what things now look like, not because of anything else outside of these are the rules your body is giving us right now, so we have to play by them, and then we have to go from there. But I have to help people understand those rules. They're like, I don't know what's going on. So I always used to be like this, and now I'm like this.
Mhm.
Why? New rules, baby. You know what I mean? Like the house always wins. House has new rules.
Wow.
Adaptation.
And you currently you're pursuing your higher education, is that correct?
I am. I had a degree in, or have a
Amazing.
degree in exercise science, but just through doing more research and work, I decided I wanted to know more. I wanted to be able to contribute more. And so now I'm currently working on a degree in molecular medicine and health psychology, because they just are intertwined so much.
What's that like to go back to school later and pursue that? Because there's a lot of our listeners have an interest in doing so. I mean, and I know that they do because they listen to this show
Yeah,
like
they
all
want
the
to
way
learn.
to the end, all the way to the end. And that's I'm big on continued education. So yeah, what's that like to do that later on? Most would say, forget it.
Yeah,
I
I
know
was that
people that did
guy.
it in their 50s, you know. So what's that like and what advice do you have?
I was that guy. And I was also terrible in high school and terrible my first go around in college. I barely passed. I mean, I have, if I could show you, I'd pull them up, but I have my grades, and I was a D and F student through and through. I was a corner cutter. I got to graduate and play in games because I was a smooth talker. I was
Wow.
all that. And it wasn't until now in my 40s where I realized that I was like, if I'm going to get a little deep and honest here, but like, I was very unfulfilled in what I was doing here because I wanted to do so much more. I didn't think I could. I didn't have the confidence. And
Wow.
because I knew what I wanted to do was going to require more education. But looking back on my education, I sucked. So I realized I was like, dude, you're cutting corners again. You're making excuses. And I had to come to grips with that's who I was. And then like now I'm going to school. So I decided I was like,
Wow.
only way to do this is if I prove to myself that I can. Like it's my version of doing my hard shit. Like we all have a hard thing. Like that's mine. And going back to school now, dude, like knowing what I want to learn, having so much love and passion for what I do, like I look forward to school. You can't give me enough. You can't tell me to read enough. I mean, there when you get to do the thing that you really are interested in, and you can just it's like playing video games. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. And I'd say if you're going back to school and it doesn't feel like that, you're going for the wrong thing. Like you should love it. It should just invigorate you in every way, and it does for me. So I
Wow.
don't know. I would say if you think about school and it doesn't do that, I don't know. That sucks. I feel bad.
What relationship do you think that focus and excitement has to do with you knowing your why or being in tune with a why
Everything.
versus the past?
Everything. I mean, I knew this is what I loved, but before I knew um my why, I guess. And even if I take it a step further, before I knew my why, I had to know my that crappy part of myself, right? I had to identify my corner cutter, right? I really had to like identify that thing and be like, that's why you're not doing this, Adam, because you know you can't quarter cut there.
Wow.
You know you and that was like my aha, and it sucked. So I was like, ugh, that's not what a man is like,
Yeah.
but like I had to feel that. And I have to be able to say that. It's like somebody saying, I'm an alcoholic. Like, I'm a corner cutter. And till this day, I'll cut corners if I can. And I have to fight it. Um, but going to college and doing it the right way and really applying myself.
Huh.
I never did that. I never did it in school. I didn't do it in college the first time around. And this time I was like, I'm not going to pass. I'm going to pass with literally the best grade I can possibly get, doing
Wow.
it the exact right way. Like, because I knew that because I cut corners for so long, if I didn't do it this way, I would never build the confidence to be the person I wanted to be in this industry.
So how are you, as you know, how are you, have you found study habits or ways to prepare that you could give, that might help those that are listening that did not
Yeah.
go on a straight path in their schooling? Because a lot of our listeners are self-taught people or second, go around people. Like one of my best friends, for example, shout out to Bryce. He just graduated from. He went at 29 to
That's
Columbia.
dope.
He was in community college and they recruited him to Columbia. He just graduated for
That's
his
so
liberal
sick.
arts there. Yeah, he's like 32. He's amazing. He just graduated.
That's so
So
dope.
I was picking his brain, like, hey, I'll have him on here eventually. Like, what, how did you study and how did you get ready? So, like, did you figure out ways that you're doing well, like that work for you that you could give advice to others that
I
didn't
did.
go the straight
So
path?
I deal with ADHD pretty bad, so I had to study. I have to learn ways to study. Um, but some of the things I definitely do is I definitely utilize supplements. I utilize alpha GPC. That's acetylcholine, which is energy for the brain. I utilize L-theanine. I utilize Bacopa Maniori to help recall for memory, recall, and storing. New peps. Um, I also use exercise protocols beforehand. So if somebody's, especially adults, this is important. Adults, our brains aren't in a neuroplastic state all the time the way kids are. And our brains have to be put into a neuroplastic state, which requires a few things. One, it requires you to change your energy levels, right? You have to go from blah to excited on some level. And then one way to really open up neuroplasticity is balance. So because we walk on two legs, the minute we lose balance, our brain opens up and starts learning so that we don't fall over. So if you are doing something you're really trying to learn, do stand on one foot, close your eyes, do some odd balance things in place for about 5 minutes. That's going to put your brain in a place of neuroplasticity to learn. And what's cool is it's not this like one for one deal. Like do it for 5 minutes and you'll have 5 minutes of neuroplasticity. Like this is a state. So you stay there for a while. Like you could utilize this for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Um, I utilize that. I make sure that in my office here where I'm sitting right now, I use aromatherapy. So scents that I really, really like that, or they even make sense that like neroli is a great scent for learning and to kind of put you in a state of concentration. Lavender, a calming scent. If I'm feeling anxious, sometimes having ADHD has anxiety that comes with it. So I'll put lavender in to kind of calm me so I can, you know, think about what I'm doing and how I need to do it. And I don't want to rush and cut corners. So I utilize a lot of things like that to really dial myself in to just be the best human I can be. Because for me, this is like a comeback. This is
Yeah.
like, I don't just want to win. I want to win taking every little percent that I can. So when I look back on this, I can be like, I kicked that. I did everything. I did it all. I did every little thing, and nobody else. Like people could see that I got an A, and they'd be like, "You worked hard. You got an A." But this is for me. This is to know that like
Yeah.
that A didn't just wasn't just an A. That
Yep.
A had so much work that I put behind it that I'm so proud of myself, and I've closed all these dopamine circles that moving forward, I truly feel like I could accomplish anything. That there's nothing too hard for me. So that's the true point of it.
Man, what a gift. That's so cool. I think it's amazing. Um,
I appreciate that.
yeah, it really is. It really is. I've been beating myself up for I have an 84 right now, GPA with my Beyond Good and Evil course on Jordan Peterson University or whatever. Looks like you're inspiring me. I'm like, all right, I'm getting aromatherapy because I want to get an A. Neuromi, you said new pep,
Neuro is a good one.
L, the theocene. I can't read my own handwriting, but it's
If you
like,
message me afterwards,
yes,
I'll hook you up,
yeah,
bro. I'll
yeah,
give you some
yeah.
good stuff.
That is awesome. No, because what it gets, and then you're doing that. It, is schooling something that you think people can do as well as their work, and like, is it something where like because I could think of all the limitations we put on ourselves, like people listen, like, oh, I don't have time to go back to school. I have a full-time job, a business, what have you. So what, just final thought on that, like, can people do that part-time, do you think,
I
later
work
in
full
life?
time. I school full time. I have 2 kids. I still train to be a
Wow.
professional strongman. Like it,
Wow.
it, it's not because I'm a badass or anything. It's I just decided that's what I was gonna do, and then I sat down and I decided. Since I decided that, I said, now let me lay out my life so I can do these things, right?
Wow.
And so I also love playing video games. I love that's my way of hanging out with my friends to just be able to get
Wow.
on and talk and play video games. And it man, I do a little bit of that, a little bit less. It means I get up a little bit earlier, but I still get all my sleep. I just don't bullshit my time in the day. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yep.
so many people BS 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here. That means a lot when you want to do a lot. You need all those minutes. So you really got to concentrate on time management and being better about it and being serious about it. Like, do you really need an hour to do that? Or do you only need about 40 minutes if you really put everything into it? Right. And
Mm.
so for me, utilizing the supplements, the aromatherapy, just all those little things I can, so I can squish these things down and get as much done in a day because, bro, I'm 41. I'm
Wow.
not dying anytime soon, but surely like I'm kind of racing against the clock. Like I want to get shit done. I want to have time
Yep.
to not only do the stuff, but enjoy the stuff on the back end. And so I also I have 2 kids and I want to show them like, look, you can literally do anything. Literally anything. Everybody says you can be the president, but you
That's
can
awesome.
literally do anything if you just say, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. That's it.
Adam, dude, best way for people listening to reach out, hire you. Do you do virtual advisory as well?
Most
Monetary
all my
model?
stuff is virtual advisory.
There
Yeah,
you go.
so I do virtual advisories, I do one-on-ones. For most of my clients, it is a virtual one. So I give people this, 3, 4 month plan. I discuss their blood panels with them. I create everything that they need, and then they can kind of, go off and trek on their own time. And we check in weekly. Or, then I also have one-on-one stuff like I do with Cisco where, I'm in his pocket all the time.
Awesome.
Basically. But people can find me on the social medias. They can find me on Instagram at Adam Tristan Coaching. They can find me on TikTok at Adam Tristan Coaching. They can find me on YouTube at Adam Tristan Coaching. Uh, yeah, I think that's all of them.
Thank you so much, brother. This was awesome.
I
Great
appreciate this. I
part
love talking
one.
to you.
Well, I'm going to read a couple books on molecular, what so have you, and then have you back so I can ask
Hey,
better questions.
the
So,
the book you need to
yeah.
read is Behave by Robert Sapolsky, his new one.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, that's a great book. I know I haven't finished it. That's a great.
okay, good.
I
It's
need to
such a
like
good book.
finish it. It's a good reminder. It's a 26-hour long audible audio.
I know. I'm working on the audio now. It's forever.
Behave. Everyone, I would recommend that as well. Thanks for the reminder. I'll add that to the top of the wish list. Thank you all for listening to the Culture Matters podcast. Please leave us a review, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks, brother.